I don't know when I started keeping it. There's no title, no folder, no formal record, but I know exactly who's on it. The list. People who hurt me, betrayed me, walked away when I needed them most. Some names I thought I'd moved on from. Some names I've circled again and again. I used to think the list made me stronger, but if I'm honest, it's made me tired. This season on Other People's Shoes, we're opening up the pages, not to fix it, to admit the list exists, and ask what it's really costing us to keep it. Welcome to Season 23, The List. Now, here's your host, Neil Matthews.
Ah, yes, welcome in one and all. Come gather round, shall we? That seemed weird to say. I don't know. Some things that pop into my head, I'm like, does that really need to make it to the air? I hope you're excited about being here today. I hope you're excited about maybe crossing some names off your list. We still have Nebraska on our list. We still need somebody from Nebraska. So if you're listening from Nebraska, just give me a little tweet, DM, whatever you want to do. We need Nebraska in the next year. No pressure. Why Nebraska? Nebraska is the last state we have on our list of states we need to cross off. When I first started the show, I really wanted somebody from every state. I just thought this is going to be an easy thing. And now 7 years in, we still need Nebraska. And pleading and begging for understanding for how I can get Nebraska. Okay, my Nebraska rant is now over. So help me welcome, because of things I don't understand, much like the state of Nebraska, why we haven't got anybody in. The other thing I don't understand in this world besides Nebraska and maybe my wife is Colts. Luckily for me, we've met somebody really awesome who's going to tell us about his Colt journey, and I can't wait to hear more about that. Help me welcome in my new friend, Peter. Peter, how are you today?
Neil, I'm great. Thanks for having me on your show, and I don't know anybody from Nebraska.
Not even an ant?
The whole time you were ranting about Nebraska, I was thinking to myself, I don't know anybody from Nebraska.
I was thinking like Tom Osborne of old, Tommy Frazier. That might be dating myself as far as my Nebraska somewhat fandom. Amon Green, I don't know. Did any of those ring a bell for you?
I played high school basketball in New Jersey, and I was in an all-star game with a guy who played defensive back for Nebraska back when they were in their heyday in the mid to late 80s, and I can't remember his name. Stud athlete.
That's okay. Again, Peter, thank you for being here today. Really excited that you've chosen to stop by. You said yes to us, but help us with this as we get started. Very important question, probably the most important question you'll ever answer in your lifetime, and that's this. What size shoes do you wear?
13.
Okay. Now, probably equally as important, if not the most important, is what style or brand do you like more than the other? And there really is only one answer to the brand. We'll see if you can get it right.
You talking sneaker or just whatever I wear day to day?
Yeah, I'm just talking your favorite pair of shoes we might find you in. And again, what brand maybe, even specifically, again, brand, really stressing the word brand to you.
All right now, because I'm an old guy and I love to go hiking, my Hokas.
Okay. I was really kind of hoping you would say Jordans. You know, Hoka's fine too. That's fine. No pressure there. No judgment of shoe judgment.
Thank you.
No shoe judgment to maybe persuade you into something different. When you were in your heydays of basketball, college basketball specifically, was your school endorsed by somebody? And did you have to wear that specific brand? Do you remember?
We did. So I had two coaches in college at George Washington University. The first guy was John Kuster, played for Dean in the 70s. And we had as our shoe sponsor, believe it or not, Pumas. And they were horrible. And then my last year, we got a new coach, Mike Jarvis, who went on to, kind of fame at GW and then St. John's. And we wore Reeboks. And there was like the original version of the pumps. Remember the pumps?
Yeah, Dominique, I think, made the pumps famous, if I'm not mistaken. Dominique Wilkins.
Yes.
In the slam dunk contest. And maybe even Dee Brown years later.
That's right. That's going way back.
I know.
Late 80s.
I know. Look at me.
Early 90s.
I didn't even Google. That's just straight out of the dome. That is Dean's dome.
That's my vintage. Wow.
Well, you're welcome. That's all for you. Help me with this as we get started. As I said, we're in this series and this season called The List. I actually had a couple people DM me and they said, listen, I don't understand what you're after. Is this a hit list? And I immediately a little bit got offended, but also got scared. I'm a 90s kid. 1999 was my senior year of high school. Wherever you were, put yourself there in 1999 if you wouldn't mind. Ask yourself this question. Do you remember Columbine? I think everyone does. What I have heard through the channels of time and the research I've done into Columbine, those kids actually had names on a list. That's not what this is in any way, form, or fashion. I really believe in my heart, God was telling me I had some names on a list that I didn't want to remember, and I was choosing not to forgive, trying very hard to forget. That's where the list comes from. So when I ask you this question, who is on your list, or who potentially, if you were going to make a list of people that have hurt you, wronged you, or disappointed you in some way, is there anybody that maybe jumps out, maybe not the top of the list, but somewhere in that list, where would they be? Not, again, ranking them per se, but would there be somebody in mind on that list for you?
Oh, yeah, you bet. There's 4 people. They're on it. Yeah. There's 4 people. It would be my former in-laws, my former wife, and then the cult leader, Uncle Robert Booty.
Now, again, right out of the gate, you use the word cult. Now, can you define that for me in your mind? What is a cult?
I will give you my definition of cult. I would say a cult has 2 things in common. Now, they could look differently. They can be big. They can be small, emotionally abusive, sexually abusive, physically abusive. But at their core, I believe cults share 2 things. Number 1 is a leader. And then number 2 is undue, manipulative mind control or brainwashing. All cults start with that. They start and end with those 2 things, and then they can look different from there.
Was that true in your situation? Is that why you can make
absolutely.
that determination, that definition? So you mentioned your in-laws. So those 2 people. So it sounds like your father-in-law, your mother-in-law, and then did I get it right?
Ex-wife.
Your ex-wife. I want to make sure I was saying that correctly. And then you,
Yeah, no worries.
what did you call him? You called him Uncle what?
Our cult leader was Uncle Robert, even though he wasn't related to any of us. Uncle Robert was born and raised in Syria. He met my former in-laws at a tiny seminary in Fresno, California in the early 70s. Before my former wife, I call her Paige, I was even born. And so Uncle Robert started this very parasitic, one-sided relationship that was very unhealthy with my time future in-laws. Paige grew up in a world where Uncle Robert was the expert on everything. I mean, everything. He was the family guru. And that was the situation that I married into.
So going into the marriage, the courtship, the engagement, the dating, first interaction, did you have any idea that they were involved in this type of religion or cult? Again, using your word.
I was working at the local ABC affiliate in Pocatello, Idaho. So I was doing the 6 and 10 sports. I'm in my mid to late 20s. And I remember I had seen Paige around town. She was a former college volleyball player. Tall, beautiful, blonde hair, blue eyes. You couldn't miss her. And Pocatello's not a very big town. I remember telling my buddy Gary, I'm at the gym working out, I didn't know who this woman was. And he said, oh, I know who that is. He told me her name, and they said, Peter, be careful. Gary was a believer. I was a believer. We went to church together. He said, her family's got this really weird family guru. That was before I even met her. And then I met her a few weeks later at a singles Bible study and fell in love very quickly. I remember on our first date, she brought up Uncle Robert. And in the back of my mind, I thought, that's got to be the weird family guru. And it was. I knew all about him real quick. I was 90% sure I wanted to marry her after 2 weeks of dating. I mean, I fell in love with this woman. I grew up in a Christian home, youngest of 5 boys, grew up in New Jersey, played college basketball, coached college basketball, was baptized, saved as a teenager, went to church, went to all the summer camps. That makes you a Christian, but I truly believed that I was a sinner and was saved. So that was all before I ever met Paige and Uncle Robert. She grew up in this world where he was the expert. She talked about her father and this Uncle Robert guy all the time. If I am going to marry this woman, I need to meet these people. If they're that big a deal to her, they're going to be a big deal in my life. So I met her father about a month into when we were dating. So they lived in northern Idaho. So I drive up from Pocatello, 6-hour drive, meet my future in-laws, and I got to go to the bathroom. So I walk down the hall. I'm a guy. I stand up. I go pee. As soon as I open the bathroom door, there he is. My future father-in-law standing really close, right in the doorway. And he says, I heard you go to the bathroom. That's weird, number one. He says, in our house, the men need to sit down to pee. It's cleaner, prevents splashing, etc. Then he said the phrase that I heard hundreds of times for the next 20 years. Uncle Robert taught me that. And if Uncle Robert taught him something, it was unassailable. You could not question it. He hated being questioned. And that was my first introduction to Uncle Robert taught me this. Uncle Robert taught me that. And so my in-laws, they called him dad. They looked up to him like he was, again, the expert on everything. He was their spiritual leader, everything else.
Things progress, I would imagine. You continue to court. You continue to then get engaged. There's a wedding ceremony, I would imagine. A celebration even. I remember my wedding day was very much a celebration. True in your case, or was it way different?
No, it was true. There's an amazing amount of fascinating things that happened in that 9-month period. When I met her to when we got married, and I wrote about it in my book. It's called Stop the Tall Man, Save the Tiger. And you might be thinking, that's a funny name for a title. Kind of is. Let me explain. I'm 6'5". Uncle Robert is about 5'6". He's a short guy, portly guy, bald. Paige had known him her whole life. Before we met, she graduated with 2 master's degrees. She started dating. She was baptized in a church in Pocatello, but Uncle Robert didn't do the baptizing because he lived in Southern California. Drove him nuts. Then I truly believe the Lord gave her a dream, a warning. And you think, well, could that still happen? He's God. Why not? He can do what he wants. There are numerous dreams in the Bible. Most of them are warnings. Here's the dream she had. She's in a house and her boyfriend's there and her mom. And in the house is a tiger loose. And if the tiger finds her, it's going to kill her. She, Paige, doesn't want to kill the tiger because to her it represents things like strength and honor and dignity. And so she just kind of wants to know where it is and keep it in control. Front door to the house opens and in comes a tall man. And the tall man's there to get rid of the tiger, to kill it. But she can't see the face of the tall man in the dream. She has this, again, folks, about a month or two before she met me. So she sends this letter to Uncle Robert. He then writes his response. It's a crazy 23-page letter on a Wednesday, because I used to have the original. On a Friday, he mailed it. That Sunday, Paige and I met at the Singles Bible Study in Idaho. So as she gets this crazy interpretation, shortly after we meet, we start dating. She has me read the letter about a month later, because she's talking about Uncle Robert all the time. It's my first interaction with him, because again, we're in Idaho. He lives in California. Hadn't met him yet. I read this crazy, and I mean crazy 23-page letter. And it didn't make any sense to me because his syntax, the way he writes is very odd. But Uncle Robert, with his knowledge of psychology, and he's very narcissistic, turned the dream around. He made Paige the tiger. Paul talks about in Romans how when we are saved, we get rid of the old man dies, then become a new creation. Uncle Robert convinced Paige that the tiger, because Paige didn't want to kill it, it represented her ego. She wanted to hold on to her ego. Thus, she wasn't saved. And then he tried to doubt her dream as if to say, wait a minute, the tall man, are you sure he was tall? Wasn't he short? He had a face she knew well. And in real life, the boyfriend, he met me once that was in the dream. And after that, he disappeared. He was gone from her life. And at the time, I just wasn't mature enough to see all this, but I truly believe it was a warning to Paige. She then trusted Uncle Robert, was convinced that she wasn't a believer. So she allowed him to, quote unquote, save her. And then we got engaged shortly thereafter and got married. Right about that time, she didn't think I was a believer either. And that really kind of set the stage, because for the next 20 years that we were married, she really subconsciously or consciously, I don't know, probably subconsciously, spent most of that time trying to protect the tiger, Uncle Robert, from me, the tall man, and protect his role in our lives. Because early on, I thought the guy was nuts. Only later, 15, 16 years into our marriage, did I finally start to cave and was I brainwashed. So there's a lot of amazing stuff that went on in those 9 months. We did get married and eventually had 5 kids.
So when did you start to think that you were in a cult and you were being controlled?
Great question. And I always tell people, and it's on the back of my book, you never know you are in a cult. You only know you were. Because again, at its core, it's undue manipulative mind control. So you never know you're in a cult. It's always something better, more sublime, more beautiful, more perfect. No, our pastor really does know the true gospel. Only Uncle Robert does. Or our self-actualization club is wonderful. It's not a cult. No one ever joins a cult. They think it's something better. I didn't understand that, Neil, until my marriage had fallen apart, my family had fallen apart. I had doubted myself. I'd been effectively kicked out of the cult when my wife left me. And about a year later, through my faith, much prayer, and my friends and family supporting me, did the Lord finally rescue me and show me, open my eyes and ears to the truth that it was a cult.
Regret anything that happened during cult years?
You know, as a husband and father, I did not do a good enough job protecting my wife and my kids from Robert Booty. That is my fault. It would have been very different. Hindsight's 2020. If I had stood up to him, really told her what I thought after one child or 2 children, because again, the first few years of our marriage, I kind of thought he was crazy. I couldn't wait for him to leave. And he never did. Would she have left me then and we would have never had 5 kids? Maybe. I don't know. The first time I really confronted my wife about him was, maybe about a year after 9/11. Now, I grew up in New Jersey and I had high school classmates who were in the buildings and got out. I had a high school classmate who was widowed that day. So 9/11 was kind of poignant. It was for most Americans. It really hit home for me. We had these conferences in Northern Idaho where Uncle Robert would drive up to Southern California. We would sit there in the living room and for hours listen to him talk. And then much of it was crazy. Some of it was truth. Cult leaders don't start spouting utter nonsense and lies right away. Nobody would believe them. They share the truth and then they slowly but surely twist it and spin it and pervert it. One of these conferences, he then gave me my first real introduction to his, raving hatred for Jewish people and Israel. He said Roosevelt was a Jew and Truman was a Jew. 80,000 people died on 9/11 and on and on and on. And it was very dark. And I was almost scared. And I remember telling my wife that night, I said, Paige, I don't think we should have anything to do with this guy. I think he's dangerous. And she listened politely. Nothing came of it. And I never pressed the issue. So when I would ask him questions, because for him, it was a very twisted theology that would go back to Jacob and Esau, the twins. Jacob became greater Christendom, and Esau became Edom, and then become thus modern Jewry. Now, again, there is some truth to that. Esau does become Edom in the Bible. You take a very kind of Byzantine, serpentine, twisted view of history and DNA to come up with his particular brand of theology, which is kind of odd. Whenever I would ask him for proof of this, okay, I've got an open mind. Can you share some proof with me? It was never, well, here's why I think this. It was always, why are you so stupid, Peter, that you don't understand me? And that was really his answer to much of my questions, because cult leaders hate to be asked questions. And again, that was maybe 2001. And that was a big red flag. I went along, Neil, to get along with my wife, and thus became the proverbial frog in the pot of boiling water.
Where is she now?
She's remarried. She's in the Pacific Northwest. She's very keen on her privacy, so I try not to infringe on that at all. She's still very much unhealthy and brainwashed. And in reality, she's a victim as well. She has been brainwashed. She has been manipulated by this wicked narcissistic man. She just doesn't know it. Thankfully, I got out and I know it, but she and her parents don't.
Is Robert still alive?
As far as I know. We had a parenting evaluation about a year ago. It was court ordered. I am now divorced. She's been dragging me through the courts for about 7-8 years now. And we had a court ordered evaluation about a year ago. And you can see who the evaluator interviewed. One of the people he interviewed was Uncle Robert's wife. They are savvy enough now to not have Uncle Robert talk to counselors or lawyers or ever have him show up in court. We had an initial guardian ad litem report about a year after she left. She took our 3 youngest kids, filed for divorce. I tried to save the marriage. I didn't want the divorce. I also didn't want to lose touch with my kids. So the court ordered a guardian ad litem into the case, which that person is there to look after the best interests of the children. And this lady wrote a jaw-dropping 50-page report, very clear, very obvious. There was parental alienation, which is where one parent tries to alienate the kids from the other. There was cult influence, which is considered emotionally abusive, all centered around Uncle Robert, which everything in her life and my in-laws' life did center around. It was Uncle Robert 24/7. So they've kind of tried to pull the reins back in public. Well, he's my godfather, tried to basically hide him.
Common question I get asked from guests or publicists, people that want to come on the show, the number one question, hey, how far is your reach? How many downloads do you have? How many people listen every week? I hate that question, by the way. Dumbest question ever.
I didn't ask you, by the way. You know I didn't ask you.
I know you didn't. I wonder, through the power of technology, if your former wife were to somehow get a hold of this message, would you want her to hear that maybe she doesn't know already?
All right, well, a couple of things. Don't like ex-wife. I don't like divorcee. Divorce, I hate those words. I never wanted it. I tried 3 years to save our marriage, and after she left me. Wrote my book, the memoir, Stop the Tall Man, Save the Tiger, came out in 2023. Since then, I've been going on podcasts. I speak publicly, and not to denigrate her. Again, in my book, I make it very clear that she's a victim, but to expose Uncle Robert, name is Robert Booty, and also to expose dangers of small cults. She must not have known that I had been doing this. She knew about the book. She's very angry about the book. Again, I try to be very kind to her in the book. I don't pull any punches. I was on a podcast in September of last year that got about 56,000 views. Somebody must have watched it and heard it and then told her. And then when she found out, she was outraged. She tried to have me held in contempt of court. Of course, it's utter nonsense. I initially wrote the book thinking maybe she'll read it and the Lord will open her eyes and then she'll have a road to Damascus type moment. I literally prayed, Neil, for years that she would have a road to Damascus type moment, kind of like I did. I mean, I had several moments where she would see, she would get down on her knees and ask for forgiveness from the Lord. Whether or not it saved our marriage or not, that's beyond the point now because she's remarried, that she would come out of this. When she read it, she even brought it up in our last court hearing about a year and a half ago, and she calls it a false fictional narrative. So she's still very angry, still doesn't believe any of it, which if you're still under mind control, that's not surprising. So if she were listening, she would not probably believe anything I'm saying.
What about your kids?
Well, there it's a mixed bag. I always tell people that parenting is a marathon, not a sprint. So we have 5 children. The 2 oldest boys are in their 20s, live in the Pacific Northwest as well. They're doing well. They still really trust and believe their mom. I'm still the bad guy. I hope and pray for them. And I hope that one day we can have a healthy relationship, father-son relationship one day. You know, no matter how good or bad the father is, and I'm not perfect, I love their mother. I never had an affair, never wanted one. Absolutely adored her, loved my kids. The Bible is very clear, 5th commandment, honor thy father and mother so you can have a long life. It doesn't say if he's a good guy, it just says honor thy father and mother. Right now, my 3 oldest children are probably not really honoring me. The middle child, that's probably the most tragic one right now. She's living with her mom and it's not a good situation. And then the 2 youngest still live with me. They still love their mother, as they should, as all the kids do. I've never tried to dissuade them from that. They now have seen the other side of the story, and I think they know the truth. They see that I'm not a devil, a Satan, a sorcerer, a bloodline, a sperm donor. These are all things Paige and Uncle Robert called me to the children. They taught the children that the 5th commandment of the Bible did not apply to me because it only applied applied to fathers who love their kids and love their wife. They literally thought the fifth commandment didn't apply to them. They were taught that I was the devil. They believed it. I remember one of my children saying to me, Dad, if I was a devil, I'd want someone to tell me. And this child said that to me. Robert had talked so much about there being demons in me. I had a legion of demons, and Paige, the children's mother, and Uncle Robert and my in-laws are driving into the children's heads how awful I am, that I'm demonic. The kids believed it. That happened after Paige left for a specific reason. If you peel back the onion enough, all cult leaders share a ton of traits. They're narcissistic. They have a grandiose sense of self. They despise questions. They make all the rules, and none of them apply to them. And they also try and blur the lines of the nuclear family or destroy it so that everybody in the cult, grandparents, parents, kids, aunts, and uncles, are all children of the cult leader. So when my wife left me after nearly 20 years of marriage, a faithful husband, not perfect, a sinner who's been saved, but was completely faithful, loved my wife, I think I raised my voice to her in 20 years twice. I know I did twice. One was after she already left me. She leaves, and I remember telling the children, I'm sorry this happened, and I was still brainwashed at the time. She had just left 2 months prior, and I told them I took all the blame. I love you, and I love your mother. She told me, why did you tell the children you love me? I said, because it's true. She said, no, you only thought you loved me. That was a lie. So she was irate, and more to the point, for the children. If the children know daddy loves mommy, then why did mommy leave? Well, Paige was never going to have the failed marriage fall on her shoulders. So then she and Uncle Robert concocted the story that I was never a true Christian, never a believer. Thus, our 20-year marriage was not a true marriage on the side of the Lord. And I was just a bloodline and a sperm donor. And they were literally telling my children, Dad, not the father, it's just a bloodline and a sperm donor. He's far from the father. Robert Booty, Uncle Robert, I remember him emailing me, you need to quit imprisoning the children in the biological prison just because you're the DNA provider doesn't make you the father. My kids are hearing this. Now, as bad as that is, Neil, I need to take you back 2 years. So she left me in 2017. The brainwashing and the adoration and the reverence that Paige had for Robert goes very deep. We had 5 kids, and we talked about having another. We had a date night one night. So we would have date night, Friday night, family night, Saturday night. We go to a date night. She's all dressed up, makeup on, looks beautiful. We go to a coffee shop, and she tells me of her burning desire to have another son, but not for me. Uncle Robert, who at this time is in his probably early 70s, had 2 children who were married, and they had daughters. So Uncle Robert had granddaughters, no grandsons. And in Paige's mind and her parents' mind, the only thing keeping the world from being destroyed by World War III was Uncle Robert. That's how powerful and amazing he was. So the world needed his DNA, his sperm, to continue with a male heir. And she wanted to be a surrogate and provide him with a male grandson, which I was repulsed by. I was angered by it. I was humiliated by it. And no one knew. We didn't tell anybody. We never told the kids. The only people that knew was she and I, Robert, and I think her parents. And I was so repulsed by the idea she didn't do it. It was never offered to one of the kids because he only had the 2 sons, Robert did. And nobody knew until it got kicked out of the cult when she left me 2 years later, and I finally started telling my family and friends. And of course, they all thought this sounded crazy, and it was crazy that these things happened. So then about that time, if you know your Bible, she started to refer to herself as Abigail. I remember the story a little bit, but I had to go read my Bible. Abigail is married to Nabal, who is surly, drunk, and the Lord strikes him dead. Well, if she's Abigail and I'm Nabal, Abigail then marries King David once Nabal dies. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out in my life who King David was. It was Uncle Robert.
Well, and Nabal is called the fool. I think it translates to the fool. So you're the fool in the story of your wife.
And all the adults in our little cult would have felt that way right around that time where she considers herself Abigail. And I'm like, I'm Nabal. And by the way, I would have like a beer a month at most. I didn't drink anything for a year or 2. So I haven't been drunk since like college days. All of the adults in our little group, again, we didn't know it was a cult at the time, would have gone through the same process that Paige did, that I described before we got married, where they had professed faith in Christ. They had been baptized. They had gone to church. They had shown fruit. Later in life, much later, so Paige was in her mid-20s, when Robert convinced her she was a fraud and not a Christian. My father-in-law, my mother-in-law, brother-in-law, 2 of the other men in the cult, all would have had their testimony, their walk with the Lord, completely destroyed by the brilliance of Uncle Robert and his way to make you feel like a worthless piece of you-know-what. He would step in and save them, which is another common trait of cult leaders. They act as a gatekeeper to God. The Bible's clear. Jesus is the gate. If you try and go over the fence, you're a goat. Only his sheep hear his voice. They go through the gate. He is the only way to heaven. There is no Uncle Robert or a pastor or a priest with a gate in front of Jesus. And yet that's what cult leaders do. And that's what Uncle Robert did with me around this time that I'm like, I don't think you, honey, should be a surrogate for this guy. I don't think I'm Nabal. Sorry, you're beautiful and you could be Abigail, but I don't think I'm Nabal. One of our conferences up in Idaho, we were all going to share our testimony. I shared mine solely to try and pacify Paige and Uncle Robert because I knew they doubted my faith. And I look back now and realize that Paige would have doubted my faith the entire time we were married. I didn't think so. First 5 years of our marriage, I thought we were the greatest ever, greatest couple ever. She was the best wife. I was the best husband. But as the years went on, I realized, I knew she respected Uncle Robert, not me. So I shared a testimony that really wasn't mine. She didn't believe it. He didn't believe it. So I finally caved, really in the hopes, Neil, of like, maybe this will finally get my wife to love and respect me like she used to. Not so much as I'm not a believer. That would have started the process of being brainwashed. Again, that was 16, 17 years into my marriage. And I thought maybe I've missed some elemental truth of the Christian walk, which of course is not true. I hadn't. I had been temporarily blinded by a wicked narcissist who tried to act as a gatekeeper to God. And then a year later, she still doubted my faith. Again, she doubted my faith. I went through the process of trying to be quote unquote saved by Uncle Robert, I think 5 times. And they to this day still think I'm a demonic fraud.
Is there any part of you that can truly forgive him? If so, how did you do that?
Yes, not easy. Only recently. I don't want to say easy to forgive Paige. I couldn't do any of this unless the Lord had given me the ability to forgive. There's no way anybody has the ability to forgive anybody else. He would have given me that ability. Recognizing that Paige is a victim, that was probably the easiest of the 4 to forgive her. Are there times where I'm still irate and angry with her because of the things she does? Yeah, I have forgiven her, and I have to go back at times and forgive her again. She still kind of attacks me through the courts. Same thing with her parents. But times I'm irate with them. They sued me. They tried to take me to the courts. They're brainwashed as well. They're victims. With Robert, it was different. It was very hard. Not had any contact with him since 2018. The courts said children were going to come back to me. They're not to have any contact, the 3 youngest, with Robert. And I sent him an email basically saying, I'm going to enforce that. Leave us alone, get lost. It's the last contact I've had with him. Have I gone through the motions of saying, Lord, please help me to forgive Uncle Robert? Yeah, I have. Probably need to do it a few more times, I guess. A case like this, is forgiveness like a rowboat that's sinking with each bucket of water? You forgive him and the boat stays afloat?
The boat is sinking and you're trying to bail it out and there's still water in it and you're like trying so hard to get it out.
Lord, please give me a big pail.
Peter, a couple things come to mind. This is me being the cynic in the room. I don't necessarily feel these things. Somebody listening to us might be feeling these things. These are not a direct reflection of how I feel. Hey, Neil, great job getting a good guest, talking about the tiny colt, talking about, hey, we should be mindful of colts. They're everywhere. They're not the big ones that we think about. They could be little ones as well. Okay, point taken. How do I know that this isn't just a heartbroken former husband? I'm not using ex, just for you. A former husband who his wife finally woke up and found Jesus, the real prophet that's going to help her grow in her faith. And he didn't like any of that. He's the one that's jaded. He should have just recognized and realized that she was growing and he didn't like the fact that she was growing. What would you say to that?
Yeah, fair question. I guess one of the answers to that would be, no one's ever asked me that. No one's ever said that. It's so obvious to everyone I've ever talked to on every podcast I've ever been to, every time I've spoken in public, everyone that I know of who's read my book, my attorneys, both garden ad litems, the parenting evaluator, our family counselor, the standing master, who's like the assistant judge, and the judge. So everybody in the court process, I mean everybody, agrees with me. 100%. The initial 50-page guardian ad litem report was not, well, it seems like there might be a cult going on. It was 100%. And that goes, again, for the last 8 years. Standing master, judge, family counselor, individual counselors, both guardian ad litems, all my attorneys. She's contacted law enforcement, local, county, and state, as far as I know, I've been told, and has tried to have me arrested. They haven't believed her. And then again, everybody that I tell the story to, if you read my book, you can make your own decision. And I'll say this too. When I first started to reach out for help in 2017, I was never suicidal, couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I'd lost about 30 pounds. I was a wreck. I was getting 1 or 2 hours of sleep at night. And I'm still under the delusion that Uncle Robert's feeding me, that I've got a legion of demons and the Lord's not hearing my prayers. He said I was incapable of receiving salvation. So then when I would go talk to people, my family, so again, my brothers and my parents who lived on either coast, nowhere near Idaho and Montana, didn't know what was going on in the cult, weren't involved. And then local friends who, again, had no idea we were in a cult. And I was almost daring, begging anybody to say what you just said. No, Peter, I think you're wrong. I think you need to look at it this way. Not one person has ever even hinted at that.
And again, I'm not hinting at that again for the record.
Right.
I struggle with cults. I struggle with them on so many levels. As I told you kind of pre-show, I love cults. Well, I shouldn't say I love them. I'm fascinated by them. That's a better way to say it. I'm fascinated by cults. I'm fascinated by what happened at Waco. I'm still fascinated by the LDS movement. I'm fascinated by the Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm now fascinated by Robert. I can't help it. I want to know more about this guy. I was told once by a pastor I could never join a cult. I curiously said, well, why do you think that? Joe, I'm changing his name in case he ever hears this. And he says, because you asked too many questions. Now, you told me that you've been in broadcasting, you've been in sports broadcasting, you and I have an affinity for college basketball. I think that's a fair statement. We both love college basketball, probably more than we should. I love North Carolina basketball. I absolutely do. I can't help it. If they're on, I stop everything I'm doing to watch a game. I don't care if they're getting beat by 20 or if they're up by 20. I will watch, even if we're terrible. Every year, Duke, North Carolina, my world stops. I sit down and I watch it, and my wife's like, you know they're going to get beat. I'm like, out of the room, woman. Get thee behind me. You know how that phrase goes. Not that she's Satan, because she's not. She's the queen, and sometimes you have to tell the queen that it's time to go to your royal palace of your own. My point is that I'm fascinated because I don't understand. Hopefully this comes across as a compliment. You seem very well spoken. You seem very intelligent. You're playing college basketball. That says that you have some abilities that somebody saw that they're like, hey, this guy can play. Can you play? But you had to get the grades to get into George Washington. That's not an easy school to get into. Granted, they don't play in the ACC, but it's fine. It's fine. It's not a powerhouse. We get it. It's fine. You don't seem that stupid.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and say it. I have no problem with that.
And again, I'm not trying to be insulting because I hate the word stupid. I've been called stupid in the past time, and that's kind of a trigger word for me, or dumb. Those are trigger words. I don't understand how you described her as this tall, beautiful young lady, and I've seen volleyball players. Most of them are tall and skinny, long legs, long arms. She's probably taller than you. I don't get how somebody could fall under the trance of this charlatan. And that's being polite, calling him a charlatan, I feel.
So again, like, you can just come out and blunt say, holy smokes, Peter, you don't look like the dumbest guy in the room. And I'm not.
I didn't want to say that. I didn't want to say that. But, I didn't want to say that. We're supposed to be friends here in this moment, not enemies.
Right. First thing that I need to answer in my mind to tell the audience, and then I'll answer the second one, there's probably a third one as well. Got sucked into it unwittingly because I loved my wife and I married into it. If I was not married to Paige and madly in love with her, I would have sat down over a cup of coffee or lunch with Robert Booty, paid the check, and left early and said, wow, that guy's crazy, and probably never talked to him again. Certainly, once the disciplining of, you need to sit down and pee, and Peter, why are you so dumb? And you need to follow my theology, my economics, which were absurd. Casinos are the true churches of America. That was another one of his things that he taught us. After hearing all that, I would have been like, sorry, bye, you're crazy. But again, I went along to get along with my wife. Then number two, in terms of, I don't see how you could do it. You don't look dumb. You don't look stupid. Back to your previous question, the straw man of, is Peter really telling the truth, or is he just a jilted ex-lover? The journey in and out of a cult is so horrible. I know what the Lord has done for me in my life. At this point, if no one else believes me, I don't care. I know what I've been through. I know what the Lord rescued me from. And if no one else believes me from here on out, it really would not bother me. It would not change my mind whatsoever. However, I will also add that since coming out, since having my eyes and ears open, I have yet to come across one person, other than those 5 or 6 people in the cult, who disagrees with me. Even if everybody disagreed with me, it probably would have taken, my recovery would have taken a longer time. But I'm pretty positive I would eventually come to the realization that, no, there was a cult and it was awful and it was wicked. That poet that says, when everybody else around you is losing your mind, but you can stay standing and keep your sanity. That is true courage. That's true belief. That's the way it would have been with me. But thankfully, it hasn't been that way. Literally, everybody I talked to, everybody who's read my book agrees and said, wow, thank the Lord that you came out of it. So again, if people think I'm dumb or stupid, and I'm not saying you do, because people say, oh, gee, you don't sound that dumb. It's okay. I'm not embarrassed. I'm not ashamed. I will laugh right there with you. I look back and think, holy smokes, that was crazy. Cult leaders prey on those who are vulnerable. And you may look at me and think, how is this guy vulnerable? I was vulnerable because I love my wife and I didn't want to lose my marriage. And that was my weak point, and that's why I stuck around.
I get that. My wife and I chosen to leave a church that we were at, and it was a soul-crushing, hard decision. Tried to reconcile with the leadership. I tried everything in my power to make it right. Romans says that as far as it depends upon you, be at peace with all people. I tried, but I was staying for my wife because she wanted to stay. She didn't feel led to leave yet. Talk about date night. It made me go back to this moment. We're driving in the car going to date night, and she said, hey, you remember that documentary we watched yesterday? And I love documentaries and cults. So those are my two go-to things. If there's a documentary and a cult together, man, it's like heaven for me. But it was about the Happy Shiny People that was on Hulu that talked about the Acquire the Fire kind of movement that was in the late 90s, early 2000s, turned into a cult. They were doing some really bad things to kids, mean things to them, abusing them physically, mean things to kids. My wife said it's time, like in the documentary, it talks about we need a different culture and we need a different community. Maybe it's time we go find one. And I was like, I literally felt like Damascus, maybe Paul, because I really felt like there was a light shining down from heaven. Maybe the angels singing in my head, the North Carolina fight song. Okay, they weren't singing that. They were singing something. And I just remember looking at my wife and I said, are you sure? And she said, yeah, I think it's time. Yeah. And I remember the very first church we went to after we made that decision, okay, we're going. And then we went to a new church that very first Sunday. It felt like the first day of school. I didn't know where the bathroom was. Are you allowed to have coffee in the sanctuary? Like, I didn't know. Like, I don't know the rules. I don't know any of the people. It was so awkward. Trying to find a new church is awkward. How do you continue to claim Jesus as your Lord and Savior? How do you continue to have faith in a God that allowed you to walk through and in a moment he could have snapped his fingers and said, no, Peter, you're done with that. He could have stopped it and he didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. The short answer is there, but for the grace of God, go I. And a lot of people have asked the same question you did. And they say, wow, it's amazing that you still have your faith. And I do. My faith is 1,000,000 times stronger than it's ever been. And my response to that is I wouldn't be here without my faith. There's a very good chance I would not be alive. It was that horrible what I went through. No physical violence or sexual abuse at all in our cult. It was all mental, emotional, and spiritual. But if you've ever suffered anything like that, it's pretty miserable. It's pretty horrible. There were a few weeks there where I was, like, Lord, take me. I'm ready. Again, I was never suicidal, but I was ready to go. I compare my story at times to the demon-possessed man in Luke chapter 8. I love this story. The man is demon-possessed. He's living outside of town in caves, cutting himself. He's been chained. He breaks through the chains. Christ saves him. He's in his right mind. And he begs Christ, says the Bible, to follow him. And Christ says, no, I've got something more important for you. I want you to go home and tell your friends and family what the Lord has done for you. Do you think that guy's got a pretty messy, bizarre testimony? Yeah. And you know what? So is mine. Mine is messy and bizarre and tragic and crazy, but it's miraculous. Because number one, all testimonies are miraculous. We can't save ourselves. If we could, we wouldn't need a savior. My testimony of really realizing I needed a savior, needed to be saved, and accepting Christ as a teenager, but then doubting it, and many years later, having my eyes covered by a veil of this narcissistic man. Christ never let me. I was blinded for a time being. It makes my story, again, really kind of ugly and messy. And yet, Neil, all that does is just prove I needed a savior. Look how bad I screwed my life up. Guess what? My savior is bigger than my messes. It's made my testimony that much stronger. I didn't go looking for it. I didn't want to go join a cult. I didn't try to mess up my life, get divorced and break up my family. It happened. And my next book on my list to read is by C.S. Lewis. I think it's called The Problem of Pain. And he talks about Christ using the megaphone of pain to get our attention. And he did. I wish I could have learned my lessons differently. I wish it wasn't so painful, but it was. But I'm 1,000,000 times stronger now than I ever was, because I don't walk on eggshells around a wife that doesn't respect me and I'm afraid of. I don't walk around on eggshells around a guru that I'm afraid of, that I look to interpret the Bible for me, to act as my go-between to the Lord. I go straight to the Lord. Abba, Daddy, Father, you give me wisdom and discernment now. Could you help me through this moment? This really hurts. I really don't know what to do. And I also want to add this too, that, as you were talking, I want to point out something to your audience. There is a difference between a cult and really bad, dysfunctional, sick, unhealthy culture. A cult and unhealthy, sick, dysfunctional culture are two different things. There's a lot of sick, unhealthy culture. Could be in some churches. A cult is a different thing. And I think sometimes the word cult gets overused.
But in this situation, you don't feel like it's being overused, just to clarify.
Correct, I do not. I remember there was a guy named George Bookman. I changed his name. He used to be in our little cult. He knew my former in-laws from a long time ago. He got taken in by Uncle Robert, and he was all in. I mean, he would have sat down to pee, just like the rest of us men, right? I mean, he was all in. Got married and got out. His wife helped him see the light. And then I reached out to him when Paige kind of kicked me out of the cult, so to speak. And we reconnected and we bonded. And then shortly thereafter, I got a book in the mail. It was an anonymous book about cults. And I thought it was one of my brothers who sent it to me. I thought, Uncle Robert was weird. It was really unhealthy and bad, horrible what he did, but it wasn't a cult. Finally read the book. And Neil, I'm highlighting with my little yellow highlighter half the book. And it was a cult. If our little group in my situation wasn't a cult, that word doesn't exist. And I wasn't looking to make this my life's mission. Like, hey, look at me. My trauma's worse than you. I remember people telling me that, it was a cult. I thought, no, come on. No, it's not. If what I went through is not a cult, they don't exist.
When we think of cults as a society, some think of LDS, Jehovah's Witnesses. Some have even said the Catholic Church. I was like, whoa, hold on. Are you sure about that? Are you sure about that? I do know that church hurt is real. I've experienced it myself. It's not easily overcome, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of self-work and a lot of prayer And I believe in even a lot of fasting to say, okay, what is it that I need to do to get free of this? The flip side of that is we know that there's these people on your list. Do you feel like in any way maybe you're on their list? And is there anything you feel like you could have done differently or said something differently? There's no way you could have saved this, or do you feel like you could have in somehow, some way?
Yeah, great question. I would say I'm probably on several people's lists. Unfortunately, it's very heartbreaking that I'm probably on the list of people in my family. It's very clear. Like I could look at court documents over the last 7-8 years. The blinding rage and hatred towards me is breathtaking. It's literally as breathtaking to see the rage on the written page that is directed towards me. It's astonishing. I've never seen anything like it in my life. Could I have done anything about it? I don't know. I do know this. As long as Uncle Robert had his position of authority in Paige's life, our marriage was doomed. If I had been able to be smart enough, strong enough, wise enough, discerning enough back in 1996, 97 to warn Paige, would she have listened to me instead of him? I don't know.
So hard. It sounds like you really loved her.
Oh, I was devastated when she left. I left Colorado to go take my first job in broadcasting. I was going to be the next Bob Costas of broadcasting. I remember praying before I went to little old Pocatello, Idaho, that the Lord would have me meet tall, athletic, beautiful Christian woman. And ta-da, I did. And I truly felt he brought us together. She's unlike any other woman I've ever met, even to this day, the good and the bad. I truly believe he brought us together. I truly believe he blessed our marriage for a time. She loved me. I always loved her. Did I love her perfectly? No. I'm a human. Again, I'm a sinner that needed to be saved, and I am saved. But I absolutely loved her. When she left, I still held out hope for years that, again, she would have a road to Damascus type moment, that she would see the light. What an incredible testimony it would be if we got back together again. It wasn't to be. So yeah, I absolutely loved her.
Loved, past tense. You don't any longer?
Well, certainly not that way. I don't know if she's a believer, honestly, Neil. At this point, I really don't know. Almost zero interaction with her other than a very testy, confrontational interactions through the court. I love the woman I married. I love that woman that I started a family with 28, 29 years ago. Unfortunately, that woman's gone. She doesn't exist anymore.
That's hard to hear, man.
There are some tragic aspects to this story. I still feel like on the whole, though, it's an incredible story of redemption. I was saved from a destructive religious cult. So were my children. They are in varying points on that journey. Let's go back to the rowboat. My rowboat is empty. I am flying along on top of the waves. Some of my children have water in their boats. And there, but for the grace of God, are we all above water. Otherwise, we'd be drowned.
What was the moment that you said, okay, I'm done. I'm out with the cult specifically?
And it's strange because often when people leave a cult, they are pulled out, they are rescued, they are removed from the situation. Rarely do people get kicked out, as I was, but I was. And I would go back to that point. It was in the spring of 2017. There was really probably 2 points, let's say 2 or 3 years removed from when Paige wanted to save Uncle Robert's precious DNA and bloodline. Now, 2 years later, they are using those phrases as a pejorative to denigrate me to my own children, that I'm just a bloodline or a sperm donor. And I knew that was wicked. And then shortly thereafter, Robert emailed me about another topic, and he lied. And I knew it. And I remember that really kind of, instead of the snowball going downhill, it stopped and it started going the other way. And again, it was a slow process. Throughout that summer, I was able to finally stand on my own 2 feet, and the Lord gave me the strength to, A, to realize it was a cult and it was wicked and unbiblical. And then 2, the strength to stand up and try and save my children. I tried to save my marriage, but couldn't. I fought like tooth and nail to save my children.
Well, that's awesome. Peter, how can people reach out? Is there social media? Where can people get the book?
Yeah, so again, it's Stop the Tall Man, Save the Tiger. You can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, and other places. Go to my website. It's authorpeteryoung.com. I do book reviews because I love to read. I also speak publicly. You can contact me. You can get on my email newsletter list. I love sharing stories. Christ used stories to share the gospel. We call them parables. I love sharing the gospel through stories. This is a true story, and it's intense. And I guarantee you, Neil, you get this or anybody else, you will not be able to put it down. Fair warning. It's very intense. Again, there is a happy ending. But I've also written a couple other books, and this one is maybe what you want to talk about. I've written 2 novels about faith in basketball. I played basketball in college, coached basketball in high school and college, and I love using sports as a metaphor for life to share the gospel. So again, I'm on Instagram and Facebook. I'm not very good with handles. Peter B. Young or Author Peter Young. It's one of those two. If you know what a handle is, you can probably find me better than I can describe where to find me.
That's fair. Peter, again, I want to say truly, it was an honor to meet you. It was an honor to hear your story. It was an honor to be in your shoes today. I mean, maybe they could be Jordans next time if we bring you back. Yeah. We could work on that.
I'll work on that, yeah.
All right, guys and gals, kids and campers alike. I know. That is it. That is all. That is, in fact, our show today. Okay. I don't often get to, quote unquote, religious. I'm choosing that word, by the way. What about this for you when you just heard that story? Put yourself in his shoes. Try it right now. I think they were 12s. That's a pretty easy size to get into for some of us. Try it on, walk around the room a little bit. What do you do? What do you really do in that moment? Are you strong enough? Are you brave enough? You got enough courageous? You got enough, I would even say, not in front of my mother-in-law, cojones to stand up to this guy? Could you forgive knowing that this man destroyed your family? Could you do that? How much resentment would you carry? It sounds like Peter doesn't carry that resentment anymore. Did you kind of hear that? I did. If you didn't, rewind it. You'll hear it. So I ask you this question as we go. Who's on that list still? And are they worthy? Are they worthy enough for your forgiveness? Let me know. You can let me know at opspodcast.com. It's a great place to let me know. It's an amazing place to let me know. You can also let me know on the socials at OPS Podcast Show under Facebook, Instagram, and X. And don't forget this when we go. So important. Very important. Probably the most important thing. Remember, when you walk in other people's shoes, you really do get a different perspective on life. I want to thank you so much for listening and stay tuned until next week when we walk in other people's shoes.